Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today is Dr. Natali Edmonds. Good morning.
Good morning, Kim.
And so you have a company called Blazers, right?
Right.
All right, cool. So what we're going to talk about today is getting someone with dementia to do what you need them to do, because that is always a struggle. And so it takes a lot more than you think it does, right?
Right.
And so a lot of the times the biggest problem, especially, when you're desperately needing to get this done, is to take them to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of clients that I say, hey, I need the doctor to evaluate them. We need to know whether they're competent. If they're not competent, we need them to fill out paperwork. We're going to have to do guardianship, and they won't go to the doctor. I have probably easily every few months, we have somebody that will not go to the doctor. So how do you get them to go?
Well, one of the ways that I like to think about this is to find a way to make it enticing. Whenever we're trying to get somebody with dementia to do anything, that's something that they're a little bit hesitant to do. It's like, what can we do to make this enticing? And I don't know a single person that would think it's enticing to go to the doctor to be evaluated about whether or not you're safe to live alone. Do you have capacity? Can you manage your finances? Do you have dementia? So sometimes it's just in the way we present some of this information to the person. I think it would be pretty scary for anybody to hear, hey, we have lots of questions about what you can do and your own independence and your own freedom and whether or not you're thinking in the right way. It's super scary. So I would recommend, thinking about, is this maybe a time for a routine checkup? Is this a time where, oh, hey, the doctor called. It sounds like you have an upcoming appointment. We're going to go get that checked out. Maybe, depending on the severity of the dementia, it's, hey, let's go to our favorite lunch place. And after lunch, like, oh, let's swing by to the hospital. They put you on the calendar for an appointment. But where I see a lot of pushback is when people are constantly telling the person with dementia or suspected dementia, something is wrong with you, we need to get it checked out. And so it's scary, and they're going to push back at that idea. So the more we can normalize, hey, it's been pretty typical for most people, at least in this country, to have regular doctor checkups. The more we can just normalize it as like, this is just a checkup, this is just what's going on, let's go see what's happening. And I like to remind people that just because an older adult is starting to have problems with their thinking, their memory, their attention, maybe they're not quite acting their typical self, it might not be dementia. It could be a vitamin deficiency. It could be an infection. It could be something else. And so we just want to step back from putting the fear in them that they have to go because something is wrong with their brain.
Yeah, that's, hopefully, depending on the severity, sometimes it's just a matter of saying, you just don't exactly tell them why they're going,
Right.
So that's so, you're like, don't tell them. Lie. I don't care.
Exactly.
So
The further along in the disease process, the more you can get away with that kind of stuff. But what I see a lot is the people in the beginning, like trying to get that evaluation, trying to get that diagnosis. And it's like, well, of course the person doesn't want to go, that's not
I wouldn't want to go either. And
right.
So I had recently another experience with talking with, some clients that their dad wouldn't take a shower. And so it'd been a long time, dad hadn't taken a shower. It's like, how do you get them in the shower, just to bathe and, sometimes just get out of the pajamas. And so.
Yes, we could do a whole class on this. We could talk about this in so many different angles. When somebody with dementia doesn't want to groom or bathe or shower, toilet, whatever it is, we have to realize it's never just one same reason for everybody. Like, we have to try to think, what could be the reason they don't want to do this? Is it, that they're embarrassed to get naked in front of somebody? And so then we have to be mindful of, how can we help make this a more private experience where we can maybe keep them covered up or let them wear a little nightgown in the shower and we wash underneath it and around it. Maybe it's that it's so cold. Maybe it's that they don't know what to do, or that, they're scared of slipping and falling, or the water hurts their body. And so maybe we need to do more of the like water in a tub situation. Like there's so many different reasons why somebody with dementia might not want to shower. That being said, a lot of times it's going to be um, our relationship with a person is so important before we try to get them to do all of these other tasks. So when we think about a lot of times people with dementia not wanting to do something, a lot of times unintentionally loving caregivers will be pushing, you haven't showered in a week. It's been 2 weeks. You stink. Look at the stain on your shirt. We're doing all of these things that are putting strain on the relationship and starting to tear that relationship apart. And even though they might not be able to remember exactly what you said and exactly what you're trying to get them to do with time, over time, they are remembering the feeling they get when you are around. And that constant approach is giving them the feeling of when you come around, I don't like it, or I feel threatened, or I feel pushed, or I feel like I'm supposed to do something I don't want to do. And it's going to make your life even harder to get them to do the thing. So the number one thing I'm always talking to caregivers to start immediately, even if you have the best relationship possible with somebody, is to start like working on reviving the relationship or maintaining the relationship. I'm talking about what are you doing every single day to show them you love them, you care for them, smiling at them, telling them a joke, letting them know that there's a relationship there beyond the care, giver, care receiver type relationship. I think that's so incredibly important because it's going to make it more likely that they will accept your help when it's really needed versus trying to accept your help from the person who's constantly telling them what they're not doing right. The other thing I would try to encourage everybody, if you're really in the thick of it and you're having a really hard time, for sure start doing things to help repair the relationship, but be okay with like the progress on the way to getting them in the shower. This could be wipes while they're in the living room watching TV. There's some pretty cool products out there that can work. This can be giving them a pedicure or a manicure where as you're doing it, you're washing them with a washcloth. This could be incorporating things that aren't too expensive, like even a bidet that you can attach to the toilet that cleans them when they sit down. So while you're working on the end goal of getting them into the shower, it's like, what can we do in the meantime to help keep them clean? And one of the things I always like to highlight and encourage people to remember is we don't want to highlight their weakness to get them to do the thing. So like if they're wearing a soiled shirt and there's stains on them and you want it to change, we don't have to point out the soiled shirt. We could just say like, oh my gosh, that's a really cool shirt you have on. I love that color. It brings out your eyes. Do you have any other shirts like that? Let's take a look at your closet. Oh, this is nice. Oh my gosh, let's put this one on. How does this look? Oh, cool. Let's take a picture. All of a sudden they're in a different shirt. It was nothing about how they spilled something on it. And so it's that kind of creative mindset of approaching things. And I acknowledge it's difficult because it's pretty much like you're learning a new language because we can't just tell them many times, hey, change your shirt, you're dirty. Hop in the shower, you haven't showered. In their perspective, they might have showered earlier that day, they might think, or we don't know exactly what's going on in their mind. So it's just us learning a new language in the way to interact that doesn't highlight their weakness, that makes it a little enticing, and that just really, as hard as it is, doesn't keep pulling apart the relationship.
Yeah, I know a lot of caregivers struggle, with those sort of things. And so I have a very good geriatric care manager that gets clients to do things that their families never thought that they would get them to do, take a shower, get their hair done, go to the doctor.
Yes.
She has a gift, that really has a way of connecting in such a way that it makes it, just makes it less of a problem. And those are hard to find. And so, because I can only imagine, it's like, I think about my mom. She's as hard-headed as she is now. I know she's going to be difficult if she ever got, dementia, because, I know how she is, so I let
Well,
her to pieces, but she
you bring
would
up
be the problem child.
Yeah. And you bring up such a good point. Sometimes our relationship with our loved one, because we've known them for so long, in some ways it can be a disadvantage because we're like, we know how they are. We know they're stubborn. We know they'll never go for it. And I've worked with countless care blazers where it's like they put like, I don't think that's going to work. I know my mom. mom. It's never going to happen. We've even put YouTube videos up on it. And then it's like, okay, well, let's just, I mean, if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. It's already not working. Why not try this? And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, how did it happen? And we have our own histories that are sometimes getting in the way. And a lot of times family members will feel kind of like upset or think, what am I doing wrong? They're so much better with the stranger coming into the home, or they're so much better with the family member that barely comes around, yet they give me the hardest time. And again, I really do believe it goes back to the relationship. Unfortunately, the main caregiver is the person that is responsible for keeping them safe, doing all the caretaking, doing all of these things. But the manner in which we do it can sometimes make that person with dementia want to push away even further, thinking they're trying to take over everything and trying to take over things that the person with dementia believes they can still do, versus somebody who comes in once a week or twice a week or not very much. They don't have all that history. And so it's much easier for that person with a nice demeanor and a good smile and a very kind of, easy approach, because they don't have a lot of that history, to come in and then just get them to do something that maybe that the main family member hasn't been able to do. So it's nothing personal, right? But it's just like, this is the way it is for many, many people.
Okay, so let's talk about the number one problem. I think this is one of the biggest problems that we see with clients, and that is getting someone to sleep through the night so that you get sleep, because caregivers have a tendency not to get sleep because the person with dementia is up, or or they're they're having to get up, or their nights and days are backwards, with sundowners and things like that. So what good tips can we give them? Because right now you're on a really good roll for great tips today.
So when it comes to sleep, I mean, obviously with everything we're talking about, you want to keep their primary healthcare providers up to date on what's going on. And one of the things I'm always reminding people is that the person with dementia doing something that we don't really think is great, or something we want to change, like not sleeping through the night, we can't assume everything is always just because they have dementia. We also want to consider, is there something else going on? Is it possibly maybe one of the medications they're taking at night they should take during the day, or vice versa? Always keep the medical providers up to date in what's happening. That being said, other things that can, the family members can consider doing would be, as much as possible, keeping the person with dementia active during the day. It doesn't mean they can't take a nap, but it does mean we want to be mindful about trying not to let them sleep all day, so that by the time the nighttime comes around, they don't want to sleep. It can be something that happens where the days and nights get kind of mixed. And so if that's already happened or on the trend of happening, we can't switch it right away. That's going to be really hard on their body, but just slowly making the adjustments, trying as much as possible to keep a routine. Of course, we live life and things happen, but waking them up around the same time and being proactive with, what are you going to have them do? What are some things in the back of your mind? After breakfast, if they tend to sit in front of the TV and then just doze off, well, now we're going to be interfering with that nighttime sleep. So is there an activity you can get them to do? Something you can ask for their help with? Is there maybe a day program nearby you can take them to? I would be encouraging things like that to keep them active during the day so that they are tired at night. At the same time, I mean, some basic things, we want to make sure we're not drinking like tons of fluids right before they go to sleep, so that they're not up all the time, having to urinate. Regular sleep hygiene for, anybody would be having a nice, calm, relaxing bedtime routine. Like, we're starting to train the brain. Oh, hey, the lamps are turned on, but the overlights are off. There's like a little bit of quiet, relaxing music. Like, this is like usually the time the body is starting to settle down. We can start implementing that. Of course, it's not like a light switch where it's going to happen right away, but it can start training the brain and body. Like, this is the time to sleep. Depending on the situation and the symptoms the person with dementia has, I have some Blazers who choose to sleep in a different room because they know it's safe, and like maybe that person is still able to like make it to the bathroom and back, or maybe they're restless and wake up, the caregiver, so the caregiver wants to sleep in a different room. Like, that's certainly a possibility. I have one Blazer I'm working with now who's still sleeping in the same room with his wife, but they ended up getting 2 beds. and that's making it easier for him. So we always have, whenever we're asking a question, like how do we get somebody with dementia to sleep? How do we get somebody with dementia to bathe? We have to run it through, like that's not a great question. Because it's going to be the answer is different for everybody. It's like, what can get my loved one with dementia to sleep? So what's the problem? Are they up in the middle of the night to pee? Are they up in the middle of the night thinking it's time to go to work, and we have to settle them down and let them know, oh, it's your day off of work. It's time to go to bed. Like we have to decide, like, what is it in their mind that we think we understand about what's going on. And then we come up with our approach for that specific thing. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And so
Yeah.
awesome. And so what do you call the 4 R's of dementia caregiving?
4 R's of dementia caregiving. I have 4 R's of like dementia responses, like when we're responding to somebody with dementia who maybe isn't doing what we want them to do. And, 2 of them I think people will be very familiar with. One is reassurance, and we can never go wrong with this, just reassuring the person. So let's say the person with dementia thinks somebody's been breaking into the home, for instance. To reassure them, it would be like, I'm going to be here. I'm going to keep you safe. I'll go take care of this. Let me go check the door. Oh, that's, we're just reassuring. And that's a really great approach pretty much anytime. A lot of people will be familiar with another R, which is redirection. And I always say we never want to redirect without the reassurance first, because when we redirect too quickly, it's kind of rude and off-putting. It's like them saying, oh my gosh, somebody's breaking into the house. And we're saying, oh, there's a bird out the window. It's like, oh no, like reassure them first, let them know you heard them. And then redirection would sound something like, okay, you know what? I'm going to look into this. Let's walk into the kitchen. Let's come sit over here. Oh, you know what? I'm thirsty. Let's have a drink of water. Here you go. Oh my gosh, that's your favorite cup. I love that cup. Remember, Janet gave you that cup. It's your favorite color. And all of a sudden you're on that. Like that's how the redirection would work. You look for a window of opportunity that has a thread to what you are talking about and what you're doing in the moment. The third R would be to reflect back to them. And this is really great if you have no idea what to do. Like sometimes the person might be saying something that's totally off the wall and maybe you don't even understand them or what it means. We literally just reflect back to them what they are saying. So somebody's breaking into the house, you would say, somebody's breaking into the house. Yeah, they're breaking into the house in the middle of the night. Oh my gosh, in the middle of the night? Yes. And so there's nothing to argue with there. You're saying what they're saying. But you can also reflect back their emotions. And this is a really great strategy where you can say, that must be scary, or that sounds scary. Yeah, it is scary. I'm upset by it. I'm like, oh man, when I'm scared, sometimes I pray. Or when I'm scared, sometimes I, listen to calming music. What do you do when you're scared? And it's a little bit just like that. Like there's nothing there to argue. We're not telling them they're wrong. We're not telling them it's not happening. We're just like reflecting. And then when all else fails, the fourth R is to retreat. If they are safe, and what I mean by that is like there's no imminent danger for them to cause harm in that moment to themselves or to somebody else, you can literally retreat, which means remove yourself. That could retreat or remove yourself. Remove yourself from that situation, whether it's 30 seconds and you come back, whether it's a minute, maybe if you have the ability to retreat for 5 minutes and then come back. Sometimes that's all that's needed to kind of hit that like reset and enter back in the picture and see where they might be at that moment. But those are 4 R's to remember. I think redirection is one that comes to mind for many, many people, but I think retreat, reflect, and reassure are like even more important.
Perfect. So tell us about your care program for families.
So we have a company, Dementia Care Blazers. The majority of what we do is 100% free to family caregivers. We post new videos every single week on, best care tips. I have many videos, for instance, on let's talk about bathing and showering. If they're not doing this and they don't want to, what do we do? And because there's so many different reasons somebody might not bathe and shower, we have many different, videos on that topic. All of those can be found just by going to YouTube and typing in Care Blazers. We do have a signature program called the Care Collective, where people who are looking for more community support, live support, and access to dementia experts, like I'm a board certified geropsychologist. We have a board certified neuropsychologist. We have an elder law attorney, people like that who come in to, provide training and answer common questions that people have. So we do live expert Q&As and support groups every single week inside of that program. And that's our Care Collective program, which anybody can learn about by going to our website, careblazers.com.
Perfect. And is that how somebody would find you?
Yeah, careblazers.com is probably a really great way. Or if you just literally type in Careblazers into any search engine, will pop up.
Perfect. And so you have an email address?
Yes, you could reach out to info@careblazers.com with any questions. Or if you're looking for something specific or a resource, we have like a free Dementia Careblazers survival guide with some of our best tips and strategies. It's over 60 pages. It's entirely free. You can find it on the website, but if anybody's having trouble with that too, info@careblazers.com, feel free to reach out.
Thanks. And then this is great. I appreciate it so much, Dr. Edmonds, for you being on the show today. And we look forward to having you on again soon.
Thank you, Kim.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.